Guys, welcome back. So today I'm out at the range with one of my favorite calibers and one of my least favorite calibers. One of my all-time favorite calibers is the 10mm, which I have here. And what a glorious caliber this is. In its prime, in its heyday, this thing was loaded so hot, it touched upon 41 Magnum power, and people really loved this caliber. Every gun manufacturer in existence, it seemed, that manufactured handguns produced firearms in this chambering. And that was right up until the FBI adopted the 10mm, and they decided they thought it was a little bit too powerful, so they PUD loaded it and called it the FBI load. Well, from that was born my least favorite caliber, and that would be this guy right here. This is the 40 Smith & Wesson. This ugly little spud has gone on to torment me my entire adult life, and you will notice that it is never featured here on the Military Arms channel. A lot of you guys ask me why. Why, Mac, don't you talk about 40 Smith & Wesson? I hate the 40 Smith & Wesson for a number of different reasons, but primarily because it took away the 10mm. Useful cartridge, not so useful cartridge. This is an answer to a question nobody asked, and this bad boy is great for hunting, self-defense, and all sorts of cool things. But anyway, so I'm kind of saying some of this stuff tongue-in-cheek. If you guys are 40 Smith & Wesson fans, I'm just ribbing you guys. It's a fine caliber. It's just not something I prefer. The 10mm, though, I really am still upset about that. I'm still mad that this little guy took this away from us. And yes, I am wearing latex gloves when I touch the 40 Smith & Wesson because I don't want this nasty little bugger touching my skin. Of course, I'm just joking. Anyway, I brought out some pretty cool guns this afternoon, and to showcase the 40 Smith & Wesson, not so much, but to talk about the 10mm, which I really do love. All right, guys, let's unpack some guns here, head over to the range, and do a little bit of shooting. Let's start off this discussion this afternoon with a brief history lesson. Not so much a lesson because I'm a horrible teacher, but let's just talk a little bit about the history of the FBI and how the 40 Smith & Wesson came into being and the 10mm fell out of favor. In the 1980s, the FBI got into a very infamous gunfight. It was now called the Dade County Shootout, and a couple of bad guys, Platt & Maddox, former military guys, were bank robbers, armored car robbers, and they decided to slug it out with the FBI, who was tailing them and were on to them for the nefarious activities. And so the gunfight didn't go well for the FBI. People were killed and people were injured, and the 9mm, after all was said and done, was blamed by the FBI for being a failure. They didn't necessarily place the blame where they should have, which was the bullet being used, which, if I remember correctly, was a Winchester Silvertip. The Silvertip of that era was a poor performing bullet. It stopped way too quickly. They were more concerned with expansion than penetration. And of course, this is where the FBI gets their penetration standards, by the way. That's why they like to see so much penetration, 12 to 18 inches. Everybody goes, why do you got to penetrate so much? Because we're not that thick. Well, that's because in the Dade County shootout, one of the 9mm rounds hit the bad guy in the shoulder. That bullet traversed his chest, but stopped just short of delivering an immediately incapacitating blow. The guy went on to continue the gunfight and to wound or kill people. So the FBI had a knee-jerk reaction. They decided to go to a bigger caliber, and there was two camps in the FBI fighting over which caliber to go to. One wanted to adopt the 45 ACP, which probably would have made more sense. And this other camp decided they wanted to go the Don Johnson route, Miami Vice it, and get the 10mm. The 10mm was a new guy on the block. It had a ton of power, and because they were having a knee-jerk reaction to the performance of the 9mm, they thought the best solution was to get the most powerful then semi-automatic caliber offering available, and that was the 10mm. Up until that point, they were using guns very similar to this one. This is a Smith & Wesson 5906. They use the Model 59 quite a bit, as well as 357 Magnum revolvers and stuff like that, they being the FBI. So let's take a look at what the FBI went to when they adopted the 10mm after we take a look at me shooting my 5906. I do love this gun. I wish these things didn't go away. I actually enjoy shooting this more than the Smith & Wesson M&P. All right. Wow, guys, I just learned something. So when I was shooting my Smith & Wesson Model 5906 just a few minutes ago, I thought the gun locked open because it ran dry. It didn't lock open because it ran dry. It locked open because it malfunctioned, something this gun has never done in the decades that I've owned it, not that I can remember. So if you look inside, you'll see a round in the magazine, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see it because of the lighting, but there is a stuck case in the chamber. Yeah, So in my last video, I talked about this stuff. This is the new Winchester USA forged steel cased ammunition. As it turns out, it's 100% made in the USA, right down to the steel cases, and they've managed to screw it up pretty good. This stuff causes malfunctions in guns that otherwise run 100% like this one. It's caused malfunctions in my CZ. It now caused a malfunction in my 5906. It was causing malfunctions in the last video. And wild inaccuracy. I mean, rounds will go feet off target just out of the blue. Yeah, so guys, as soon as I'm done with this case, I don't think I'm going to buy any more of it. It's certainly very tempting because the cost is low. But holy cow, this stuff is just unbelievably bad. Yeah, sorry, I wish I could say good things about it, but I can't. I am done with that stuff. When the FBI wanted a 10mm handgun, they worked with Smith & Wesson to develop it. Smith & Wesson already had a popular line of handguns in 9mm and 45, so it was a simple matter for them to convert what they already had in inventory to something chambered in 10mm. Here's the handgun they developed for the FBI. This is the 1076. 10 standing for 10mm and then model 76. It is a short handgun. You'll notice that it's designed for concealed carry. It's not what you would technically consider a full-size handgun, even though, in my opinion, it does have a full-size grip. The gun does not have a decocker, so you'll notice on both sides there's this little round plug in there where the decocker would normally be. It's not there. It's because the decocker is right here on the frame. You'll also notice that it has a bobbed hammer, so if you want to decock the pistol, instead of using the signature lever that would be right here, you use the little lever right here, and that decocks the pistol, making it ready for double action fire. Now, just like pretty much all of the Smith & Wesson handguns of the era, it does have a magazine safety, so with no magazine in the gun, the trigger is completely disabled. The 1076 fired from a 9-round single stack magazine. It is a windowed magazine, so you can put 9 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the tube, for a total of 10 rounds of basically 41 Magnum. Now keep in mind, when the FBI adopted the 10mm, the normal loads were pretty much the normal loads of the day, and they were loading 200 grain projectiles at around 1,200 feet per second out of a handgun. Again, that's touching upon 41 Magnum power. The guns were very snappy. They had quite a bit of recoil for the era. Okay, granted, today we're used to shooting 500 Smith & Wesson Magnums, and compared to something like that, these guns have basically no recoil, no matter how hot you load the 10mm. But the 10mm was a pretty stout cartridge, so much so that the FBI's qualification scores plummeted right after they adopted this handgun, and that's how the infamous FBI load came into being. The FBI PUD loaded the cartridge, brought the velocity down, reducing the recoil, and ultimately Smith & Wesson got the bright idea, hey, we can just trim a little bit off the case length, shorten it, fit it into a standard 9mm frame, because the 10mm is quite a bit longer, well, not quite a bit, is a little bit longer than a standard 9mm or 45, which means the grip has to be a little bit longer. If they trimmed it back a little bit, they could fit the 40 Smith & Wesson into a 9mm sized handgun, and poof, they've solved all the problems. And in the FBI's opinion, at least of the day, they did solve all the problems, and the FBI adopted it, as did pretty much every law enforcement agency in the United States. But thankfully, that's all changing, and they're all going back to 9mm now, including the FBI. But I digress. Let's do a little bit of shooting with the 1076, and then let's talk about some loads that are available out there for 10mm that bring back the old normal loads and do away with the PUD loads that are still commonly available out there on the marketplace. All right, so the ammunition I'm going to shoot right now is some Underwood Ammo. I really do love these guys. They do some really cool stuff. I've featured them here on the channel before, but they're one of the few companies out there, they're certainly not the only one, but one of the few companies out there that still offer 10mm in its true loaded form. Here we have some of their, let me get this out of there, out of the shadow there. We have some of their 10mm ammo. It's a 200 grain projectile doing 1,250 feet per second, which we'll test that here shortly. But this is what the FBI was using when they first adopted the 1076, and this is the stuff that scared off all the agents and made the FBI want to PUD load the cartridge. Let's see this stuff being fired out of the 1076 here really quick. All right, as you guys can see, it has a little bit of recoil to it. Shooting it causes the gun to jump, obviously, quite a bit. Those loads are pretty warm, but totally manageable. It's not something like a 9mm where you can do really quick rapid shots with it, because you are going to have to get that recoil under control. But man, what a pleasure to shoot. I really enjoy full house loads on the 10mm. All right, guys, this is my lab radar system. It's a Doppler radar chronograph that's used to measure bullet velocity. It doesn't require sunlight, doesn't require anything. It is a radar system. It's really cool. We've been playing with it for quite a bit here. We learned about it from a guy at the long range who had one, picked one up, been using it quite a bit, liked it so much, we're now carrying them at Copper Custom. We do have a few in inventory. They're kind of hard to get. But anyway, so what this bad boy does is it's going to tell me the muzzle velocity, which I actually have it set to read at about 5 feet from the muzzle, all the way out to about 130 feet. First up is going to be the American Eagle, which is the 180 grain stuff that they advertise traveling at 1,030 feet per second. I'm going to use my SIG 220 Elite for this testing, just because I enjoy shooting it. Let's go ahead and turn this on, make sure. All right, we should be recording. Yeah, let's see. All right. Hopefully, we're all set up. Let's see what this stuff does here. 1,066, 1,065, 1,064, 1,076, and 1,077. So it's a little bit hotter than what they advertised, but it's also being fired out of what I believe is pretty close to a 5-inch barrel. All right, let's try something else. All right, so now let's give the SIG ammunition a try. This is the 180 grain stuff that they advertise at 1,250 feet per second. Gonna fire it out of my 220 Elite with the 5-inch barrel. And let's make sure that this is recording. We have a new series set up, so let's see what the SIG ammunition does. Yeah, that's definitely warmer, and it's right at the advertised velocity, 1,256 feet per second. Huh, don't know if it didn't. No, it says shot 2, so exactly the same velocity on that one. 1244, shot 3. 1254, very consistent. And 1249. So, right at the advertised velocity out of the 5-inch barrel of the Elite. All right, now let's give that Underwood stuff a shot and see how hot it is. I'm looking forward to this one. I think I got the lab radar all set up. Now we have, in the SIG's magazine, some of the Underwood 200 grain ammunition that they advertise at 1,250 feet per second. Let's see if it pulls it off. All right. Go ahead and decock it, make sure that we have the radar system on. All right, let's do this. That stuff feels pretty warm. Yep, 1268, right at the advertised velocity. 1251, 1268, 1257, and shot 5, 1257. So yeah, that stuff is right at the advertised velocity, and I will tell you that has the most brisk recoil of any of the ammunition we've shot so far this afternoon. Not unmanageable, but I can understand why FBI agents carrying a 10mm shooting stuff like that, holy cow, that would not be fun to qualify with if you're not an experienced shooter. So, all right, I got one more thing I want to show you this afternoon, and then let's play around with some body armor and talk about knockdown power. And this is why I love the guys over at Underwood so much. Here we have some 135 grain hollow points. Let's see if I can get that out of the shadow. Look at that advertised velocity, guys. It's a 135 grain jacketed hollow point at 1,600 feet per second. Just let that soak in for a second. That is incredible, and that's another reason why I love the 10mm. You go with lighter bullets, and good grief, you can push them darn near rifle velocity. Maybe. Let's see if that advertised speed lives up to what the old lab radar tells us. All right. Go ahead and turn this bad boy on. I have a new series all set up. Once again, we're going to use the 5-inch barrel of my SIG. Make sure we have the radar active. All right, let's see how warm this stuff is. $15.57, pretty close. $15.48. $15.78. $15.68. And $16.03. We hit the advertised velocity. What's pretty cool, guys, is the recoil is fairly mild. I won't say it's as mild as those 180 grain American Eagle loads, but it's pretty darn close. And we're seeing 1,600 feet per second out of a 135 grain projectile. I would say that would probably make a fairly substantial concealed carry load, and it might even do well on pigs, although I'll probably wind up using the 200 grain ball rounds on pigs. That's pretty darn impressive. Yeah. All right, guys, I know what you're gonna say. Oh, Mac, why didn't you shoot the 40 Smith & Wesson? All right, in the name of science, I'll do it, okay? I just randomly picked up some 40 Smith & Wesson. It's 180 grain UMC. I don't care that it's not a self-defense load. We'll just compare it to the 180 grain 10 millimeter commercial loads. Here's what it looks like. Here's the nasty little Glock 23 I'm gonna shoot it out of, and yes, I have my glove on. All right. Let's create a new set here really quick. Log its own data, because I don't want it touching my 10 millimeter data. All right, I think we are now ready to give these 180 grain 40 Smith & Wessons a shot. And I actually touched it. What am I doing here? A whopping 981 feet per second. Recoil is fairly mild. 961. 960. 971. And 966. Thankfully, this experiment is now over. I can get rid of the Glock. And there you guys have it. So the 10 millimeter definitely is warmer. Big revelation there. So if you guys follow the channel, you'll know I've been using these rubber dummies for a while. You're seeing them all over social media now these days. I've had these guys coming up pretty close to a year. I've used primarily these targets at my indoor range. They're really handy and safe for indoor range use because the bullets pass right through and go into the steel traps. And I'm also using them out here at the Mac range. These guys are really handy, really cool, somewhat 3D. You can put shirts on them and stuff like that. Cool targets. But I feel really bad about poking holes in my rubber dummy. Now, they do seem to take the holes well. I got about 1,000 rounds in my other one. I still haven't shoot a complete hole in his chest. But I'm going to do something for my rubber dummy here. I'm going to give him some body armor. This is some Spartan Armor Systems 3A, NIJ 3A armor. It's really lightweight, very thin. And we're going to see how the 10 millimeter 200 grain round nose rounds fare against it. But I'm really curious how those 1,600 feet per second jacketed hollow points from Underwood Ammo do against this body armor. As we already know from previous videos, speed kills armor. It's the hollow point. I can't predict what it's going to do. But that looks pretty good right about there, I think. All right, let's tape up our rubber dummy, give him some body armor that he much deserves. And also let's talk about knockdown power, all right? So I don't believe in knockdown power. If somebody can give me an actual formula for knockdown power, I'd be more than willing to take a look at it. But what I want to demonstrate here is hopefully this panel will stop these really hot 10 millimeter loads. And my rubber dummy is kind of precariously sitting here. I mean, I can very easily just knock him right over, all right? He's sitting on a square base that is on uneven ground and it'll fall right over. If you watch Hollywood, they would have you believe if you get hit with a 9 millimeter or a 10 millimeter or something like that, you're going to go flying backwards. Well, let's see if that's true, because we're going to stop a bullet here this afternoon, I think. All right, let's tape him up. Operation Save Rubber Dummy is underway. All right, guys, only about 5 yards away from my little buddy downrange. We got some of the 200 grain Underwood ammunition loads. These are the hot ones, 200 grainers that are doing right around 1,250 feet per second. I'm going to use my new SIG that I love so much, and we're going to pop him right in the chest. I'm going to kind of keep it up high, and then I'm going to do the 135 grainers just a little bit lower on the chest. All right, Mr. Rubber Dummy, take one, they're free. All right, I don't think I'm going to hit him with the second one. Let's go see what happened. It does look like the armor stopped the bullet. It punched Mr. Rubber Dummy a pretty good one in the solar plexus, but he doesn't have a hole in him. You're welcome, my friend. All right, well, let's tape this up once again, and then let's hit this guy with the 135 grain jack of the hollow point, moving at 1,600 feet per second. And if it punches through this panel, some of you guys may say, well, you damaged the panel, that's why it made it through. Well, if it makes it through this one, I brought out a second one. We'll shoot a brand new one, but let's see how this already shot one holds up to being hit with that faster moving bullet. Alrighty, round two. This is the 135 grain jacket of hollow point stuff from Underwood Ammo that's doing right at 1,600 feet per second. I'm gonna aim a little bit lower, and let's see how Rubber Dummy fares. Let's hope his body armor holds up. He's having a rough day at work. Huh. Let's go see what happened. And I was getting kind of worried there for a second. I thought I might have made it through. Here's that stupid shadow. There we go. There's the entry for the 135 grainer. Up here, this depression is where the 200 grainer went in. And then here on the back, you can see the depressions. Right here is the 200 grainer and the 135. You can see the back face deformation on that. So both of them were stopped by the Spartan Armor Systems 3A body armor. And you'll also notice that Mr. Rubber Dummy wasn't knocked over. Imagine that. Knockdown power, huh? All right. So I tried to knock the Rubber Dummy over with single shots using body armor and stopping the bullet. Didn't seem to work. So what I've done now is I've loaded my 1076 up with some of those 200 grain Underwood loads. And from pretty darn close range, I'm going to mag dump this guy and see if I can get up enough energy to actually knock Mr. Rubber Dummy over. All right, you're going down, dummy. There we go. There's your knockdown power. Stay down. I said stay down. Keeps trying to get up. Oh yeah, that's right. He's my friend. Sorry, dude. Have you ever wondered if you could take 40 Smith & Wesson ammunition, stick it in a 10 millimeter, and have it work even though the case length is a little bit shorter? I don't know. Let's find out. And it even locks open. So, guess if I want a low-cost alternative to shooting 10 millimeter out of my 1076, I can always grab a box of 40 Smith & Wesson. If I didn't hate it so much! Flame down below. I hope you guys enjoyed coming out to the range with me this afternoon, talking a little bit about the history of the 10 millimeter, how the FBI adopted it, then went with the PUD load, 40 Smith & Wesson, and that kind of permeated across all law enforcement circles and bled over into the civilian world. But like I said, it's also interesting to note that they're all going back to 9 millimeter. But sadly, because the 40 Smith & Wesson came onto the scene, it killed the much more powerful 10 millimeter, and it's not nearly as common as it once was. There was a time in the late 80s, early 90s when you could go into pretty much any gun shop and find a 10 millimeter handgun and plenty of ammunition to go with it. And then slowly the manufacturers of the ammunition started to PUD load their 10 millimeter too, because they were concerned with liability concerns of handguns not being able to handle the full pressure loads. Thankfully, companies like Underwood are manufacturing full power 10 millimeter loads and even offering things like those 135 grain slugs going at 1,600 feet per second. So if you're a 10 millimeter lover like I am, you might want to check out some of this 10 millimeter stuff that's being offered by Underwood Ammunition. If you guys have any questions about anything you've seen in this video, you can ask those questions down below. I usually stick around after the first couple of days when a video goes live to answer any of the questions you guys may have. Also, please swing by and check out Copper Custom. It's our online store. If you would like to support the Military Arms channel, it's the best possible way. Shopping over there, you can even pick up a Mac patch. And if you haven't already, please check out full30.com. That's full30.com. We've taken all the web's best firearms content creators and brought them under one roof, and that is full30.com. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and we will talk to you guys soon. Now to finish out this magazine.